Hey there. Let's start with a simple question. If you travel from Italy to Japan and then to Brazil, which single currency can you almost always use or easily exchange? The answer is the US dollar. But why? Why does one country's currency dominate global trade and finance, while others like the euro, the pound, or the yen don't reach the same level of influence? The US dollar wasn't always the world's dominant currency. In the 19th century, that position belonged to the British pound. Britain controlled vast colonies, had enormous trade networks, and its financial system was the global center. But two world wars drained Britain's resources and weakened its influence. The United States, with its enormous economy and relatively untouched homeland, emerged as the new economic superpower. Size alone, though, doesn't make a currency dominant. A global currency requires trust. Trust that it will hold value, that the issuing government is stable, and that it can be used reliably across borders. That trust was cemented in 1944 at the Bretton Woods Conference. Representatives from 44 countries met to design a new global monetary system after the devastation of World War II. They agreed to make the US dollar the anchor currency, linking it to gold at a fixed rate and pegging other currencies to the dollar. For countries around the world, this created stability. They could hold dollars as reserves, confident that they would retain value. The system made international trade and loans predictable, which was essential for rebuilding economies shattered by the war. But in 1971, the U.S. ended the gold standard under President Nixon. The dollar was no longer backed by gold. It became a fiat currency, meaning its value depends on trust in the U.S. government and economy rather than a physical commodity. Surprisingly, this did not topple the dollar. By then, the dollar had become so entrenched in international finance that countries continued to hold and use it. The stability of the U.S. economy, its political institutions, and its global influence kept confidence high. Another crucial factor reinforcing the dollar's dominance is oil. In the early 1970s, the U.S. struck agreements with major oil producers, particularly Saudi Arabia, to price oil exclusively in dollars. This arrangement meant that any country buying oil on global markets had to first acquire dollars. This system, known as the petrodollar system, ensured a constant global demand for U.S. currency. It also allowed the U.S. to run higher trade deficits than most countries could manage because foreign nations continuously recycled dollars back into U.S. Treasury bonds, creating a feedback loop of demand. Today, the U.S. dollar dominates global finance in multiple ways. Roughly 60% of all foreign exchange reserves, the financial savings accounts that countries maintain to stabilize their economies, are held in dollars. About half of global trade is invoiced in dollars, even when the United States isn't directly involved. Most international loans and debt are issued in dollars. Corporations and governments worldwide rely on the dollar for settlement, hedging, and investment. This dominance gives the U.S. unique advantages. Because global demand for dollars is so high, the U.S. can borrow cheaply and maintain large deficits. Treasury bonds are considered the safest investment worldwide. Essentially, the U.S. can finance spending by issuing currency that the rest of the world actively wants to hold. The dollar's role as the world's primary reserve currency creates what economists call an exorbitant privilege, allowing America to spend and borrow in ways that other nations cannot. Of course, this power also brings responsibilities and risks. The dollar is deeply integrated into global finance, meaning that fluctuations in the U.S. economy ripple worldwide. Interest rate changes by the Federal Reserve affect markets from Tokyo to Nairobi. A financial crisis in the U.S., like the 2008 housing collapse, can trigger instability globally. So in conclusion, US dollar is the global currency.